For people who interview potential candidates for high-level positions, what was the worst interview you conducted? I was chair of a committee to screen a new library director. The candidate came in and was dismissive of me from the beginning. It was as if she was insulted that a lowly librarian was interviewing her instead of a dean or provost. Then during the interview she asked a question which I was answering. She interrupted me, told me I wasn't answering her question correctly, and then proceeded to explain my library to me. The faces of the rest of the committee were hilarious to watch. They gave up on poker faces and just let their true opinions show. Several just put their pens down and just went through the motions with the rest of the interview. I'm not sure she was savvy enough to notice. In the middle of an interview I had a few years ago, my soon-to-be manager thanked me for dressing up and explained to me the guy he interviewed the day before showed up in a mesh t-shirt lol. She only spoke in high-end corporate speak and non-answers. I didn't have any clue about her as a person leaving that interview, but could tell she was the absolute wrong fit. Of course she was hired and has tanked that program. I swear she has dirt on someone high up, otherwise she would have been removed. I interviewed a guy for a head of marketing position many years ago. This guy shows up to the interview and is immediately smug as hell. We haven't even started yet. He refuses to turn on his camera, instantly remarks how he worked for Facebook, and let it be known that he's the real deal. I ask him what are the channels for video game marketing, and he responded with I don't know, does it matter? Astonished, we asked him how he would approach marketing different platforms, and he responded with lots of money. I asked him if he realized we were an indie company, and he was like that doesn't matter. Halfway through the interview, the CEO himself finally begged me to stop the interview. We contacted our recruiting firm and told them he was the single worst candidate we had ever encountered. They dropped him as a client because apparently this wasn't even the first time he was a terrible interview. I still remember his name. He ended up going back to Facebook. Seemed like he tested the market, realized he wasn't shit, and then went back home where he could blend in as a useless nepo baby. I interviewed a guy for a higher level management position for the company I worked for. Attire was supposed to be business professional. He showed up in a Hawaiian shirt, jeans, and flip-flops because he thought this interview was just a formality and he believed his supposed reputation in the industry just preceded him. I had no idea who he was. When he realized we were actually asking questions he just said trust me, I'm the guy for the job over and over and over again. It became a running joke for all of us when we'd get a new assignment. Senior engineer role, in person, right before the pandemic. Guy kept steering all his answers to technical questions back to the time he'd spent with Peace Corps. After the third time, I just let him ramble. When we were done, I offered to toss his empty cup, and he was weirdly protective of it, like insisted it was too much trouble and I could just show him the kitchen on the way out. Sure, whatever. Guy washes his paper cup before throwing it out and leaves. In our follow-up meeting to discuss the candidate, our director was pissed because the guy wouldn't stay on topic, and if he didn't know any better, he'd think the candidate was drunk. And then it clicked as to why he'd been so odd with the cup. We did not make an offer. I once interviewed a woman who was a Dolly Parton impersonator in her spare time. No word of a lie. She asked what the hours were. I told her they weren't set as such, reasonably flexible, and that I was more interested into what she put into those hours than the hours she did. She replied not 9 to 5, then, and proceeded to start singing that fucking song. I swear she was freaking crackers to be honest. I'm a senior engineer at our firm, and often sit in on interviews to gauge technical prowess. We had some kid come in fresh out of college, and it was evident he read, or was given some advice, to come off demanding the, if you know exactly what you want people will respect you type of thing. It was almost comical. He came in and said things like look, we all know the back and forth. The bottom line is I'll help progress this business and take you in new directions. He was also saying things like I'll need you to stock Pete's dark roast coffee in the kitchen. I like my lunch time around 2 PM. I need vacation time available immediately. Mr. Confidence turned into Mr. Confidently Rejected on the spot. At one point my boss even asked, are you always like this, or are you just nervous? Lol, I never saw a face sync like that so fast. We even gave him pointers to tone it down, or he's going to have a really hard time out there. A friend of mine was interviewing a candidate for a customer-facing managerial position, public university, think head of department kind of role. This woman was adamant about being the opposite of a people person, said she prefers to work alone. The position is basically half delegation and the other half is collaboration, and said her biggest weakness was trying to relate to those who reported to her. She didn't elaborate and didn't seem to understand that she was giving the literal worst answers possible at every point. The most awkward part was the fact that when no one was hired for the role, they reposted the job listing and that woman applied again, and they were required by law to interview her again. The candidate was made aware that no one interviewed was deemed a good fit. Her answers did not change. I once set up an interview with someone for a lead position at a company I've since left. Right from the start, they sent me a snarky email saying, if you're going to post a job, at least make sure the people you mention actually work there. I was confused, so I asked them to clarify. They responded, claiming the name of the company's founder/director listed in the ad wasn't accurate, and that no one went by that name in the list of employees on the website. Confused, I double checked our website and right at the very top of our Meet the Team page has the name and photo of the company director, which matched the name listed in the ad. I therefore went back to the candidate and confirmed that the name of the director on the job ad was indeed correct, and apologized if they misread this. They responded, completely inacknowledging my response, to confirm their interview time. Weird, but okay. Fast forward a few days to the interviews and we are conducting the initial rounds via Zoom. The candidate from the email tried to join the meeting 45 minutes before their scheduled time, while I was interviewing another candidate, so I declined their request to enter and intended on giving them a call once finished to see if something happened / they needed to meet earlier. Before the other interview even ended, I received a rambling email where they berated me for not letting them in early and threatened to report me to company director's name. I simply replied, we don't have anyone by that name working here, and then blocked them. Edit. This was during COVID when Zoom was just starting to take off. I was hiring for a role, and someone reached out to me via LinkedIn to let me know they'd applied. Totally fine. It turns out he was the son of a former coworker, which was interesting to know, but not really relevant to the hiring process. I reviewed his resume, but unfortunately, he didn't have the experience needed for the role. His background was in completely different industries. Since I used to work with his mom, I gave him that feedback, and he was totally understanding. His mother, my former coworker, then reached out to me, pleading her son's case. She even said she'd personally fill in any gaps in his knowledge and coach him through the role, insisting that I give him a chance. Two big problems with this. Having your mom reach out like this makes it seem like you can't stand on your own in the workplace. His mom and I now work for direct competitors. There's proprietary information involved, and she would potentially have access to it. That's a major conflict. Bottom line, don't have your mom reach out for you in a job application. And definitely don't bring her with you. Some guy came in, and he was the spitting image of Mr. Bean. He had a briefcase / suitcase, and was dressed in tweed. It wasn't a joke, he was just that way, but me and ours just couldn't keep it professional. He said things like, oh, I'm never sick, except at Christmas when my mum said I was talking to the curtains. Our woman had to leave after that one, and get herself together. Interviewed a lady for a senior data science position who continually said things like, I'm a perfectionist, if there is something I don't like I will do it myself. I have rewrote almost all my old company's policies. The interview went from who this lady really likes, do get shit done, to who this lady is going to be in everyone's shit. We were interviewing for the art director position at a 50-person video game studio. A candidate had 27 mistakes on his resume, typos, formatting errors, and incomplete sentences. I brought this up to the studio general manager, and he said he's dealing with art. How much is he going to have to write? They hired him, in part because he'd done one of the voices on the original Warcraft game. Our studio closed 5 months later. For a while I had managerial oversight over our call center. Without giving away too much personal info, we take over 5,000 inbound per day, with between 500 to 2,500 outbound calls performed by our staff depending on season, and if anything is broken. Finance related. I'm interviewing someone for a major role, not a supervisor, but the person who all of the supervisors would report to. Position needed 5 to 7 years experience, with at least 3 years of call center time, at least 2 years of management or supervising experience, all the good stuff. It's a Zoom interview, because this is a couple years ago, but this person is visibly drunk. Slurring words, head drooping, the works. I do the introduction, and turn on the recording, and they start off by asking if they'll have to talk to customers, because they refuse to talk to customers, and they told the last guy that. I mean, yeah, you will probably handle some escalations, which I said. They swear audibly, and say something like okay fine, but I'll need to negotiate a higher starting. I've never taken calls before. What? A waiter or a bartender clips into their background at one point meaning that they were doing this interview in public. I ask about it, and they say they don't have internet at their home right now. Okay fine whatever, and they may need to work out of a coffee shop for the first few months. I say that's not possible, because we deal with sensitive information. You need a private location. They then ask me if the company is going to pay for their housing, which I say we can't do. It only went downhill from here. They were probably minutes from faceplanting and passing out before I ended the call. And because you know this is coming, 3 days after I had ours sent out the standard thank you for your interest, but we've decided to go in a different direction email and call. They accused me of racism/gender discrimination. I sent over the recording of the interview to legal with a very big smile on my face. I've been told that legal still shows it to noobers in their department when they need a laugh. Not but someone I know was interviewing people for a high level position at a company he worked at. All the candidates had great resumes, and as he was waiting for the next candidate he hears screaming by the hall. He sees the candidate swearing and screaming at a custodian. Custodial just gave a look that could kill. The candidate got angry because the custodian had the audacity to walk past him. He wasn't hit. There were no forms of altercation. But the candidate was disgusted to see a dirty monkey. That candidate was escorted out by security guards and he had come back the next day to sue the company with the police behind him. They would show the CCTV recording and he was escorted out by the police.